Today's lesson is tiramisu, a deliciously sweet pick-me-up. Hi, everybody. I'm Roger.
Hello, I'm Kiki.
Today we're going to talk about a sweet kind of food from Italy called tiramisu, and it's a deliciously sweet pick-me-up. Yes, indeed, it is quite sweet. I don't remember if I've ever had it before or not. All I know is that I haven't had it for a long time, but I've seen pictures of it, and it does look very tasty. Are you a big fan of tiramisu?
Yes,
Kiki?
I enjoy having tiramisu, and it's a great pick-me-up. So a pick-me-up is basically a thing that makes one feel more energetic or cheerful. And we will find out later why tiramisu is a pick-me-up because of what's inside of it. Okay, so I like to have tiramisu, and what about you, Roger?
Well, like I said, I can't remember if I've had it or not, so I'm sure I would be willing to try it if somebody served me some. But in any case, we are going to be talking about tiramisu in today's program. So without any further delay, let's get to it. Let's listen to the first part. It's an introduction to our topic. Let's listen carefully.
Tiramisu, a deliciously sweet pick-me-up. Have you ever eaten at an Italian restaurant and still been a little hungry after your pizza or pasta? If so, you've likely enjoyed some tiramisu, a classic dessert found on Italian restaurant menus all around the globe.
大家好，第一部分先介绍单字 pick me up。这个字是名词，有提振精神的东西或是提神饮料的意思。例如 Julie needs some pick-me-ups to get rid of her bad mood. Julie 需要一些能振奋精神的东西来摆脱她的坏心情。再看一个例句 My dad always drinks a pick-me-up to stay awake during long-distance drives. 我爸爸总是在开长途车时会喝提神饮料来保持清醒。
Okay, so again, we're talking about tiramisu in today's lesson. It's a kind of dessert from Italy. We're also describing it as a pick-me-up. A pick-me-up is something that gives you a little bit of extra energy. Like if you get up in the morning and you're not quite ready for work, well, you might drink a cup of coffee as a pick-me-up, something that will sort of wake you up because coffee contains caffeine. I tend to wake myself up with an apple in the morning. That's a good pick-me-up as well. But here in the first paragraph, we have a question. Have you ever eaten at an Italian restaurant and still been a little hungry after your pizza or pasta? Yes, I could say I have eaten at an Italian restaurant before, and I was still a little bit hungry after I had my pizza or my pasta. So these are some things they may serve in an Italian restaurant. Pizza, I do enjoy pizza, and I do enjoy pasta. Are you a big fan of pasta, Kiki?
Oh, I am a sucker for all sorts of pasta. I love pasta. I love it with pesto. I love it with Alfredo. So basically, pasta is a type of dish from Italy, and usually it is a type of noodle. There's lots of different shapes. We have macaroni, spaghetti, fusilli, and they will use these pasta noodles. They will cook it in water, and then they will have different types of sauce on it. And the most popular pasta that people will probably think about is spaghetti with red sauce or bolognese sauce with meatballs.
Yeah, I like that without the meatballs. Yes, I like spaghetti with tomato sauce or margarita sauce. It's very tasty, but as you said, there are different kinds of sauce and different kinds of pasta that you can enjoy. Again, pasta is just Italian noodles, not just spaghetti, but all the other forms as well. I did want to mention that the American pronunciation is pasta. You'll also hear Canadians, and I believe some Brits, they'll say pasta because I guess that's what it looks like, but pasta is how you would say it in Italian, and that's how the Americans say it, I guess because of the Italian influence in the United States. So yeah, you might feel a little hungry after you have some pizza or some pasta, and if so, you've likely enjoyed some tiramisu, a classic dessert found on Italian restaurant menus all around the globe. So yes, this is a choice you may have for something sweet to have after your meal. Yes, indeed, you probably would enjoy some tiramisu. What is it? Well, it's a classic dessert, and they serve it in Italian restaurants all around the globe or all over the world.
Right, and it's a classic because it's something that is just very timeless and lots of people can enjoy this, and that's why it is a classic dessert. Okay, that comes to the end of part 1. Let's listen to part 2.
Tiramisu is a layered dessert. It's typically made from sponge cake soaked in espresso and then topped with mascarpone cheese mixed with sugar and egg yolks. In some more grown-up recipes, a sweet liquor is also added to the cake for an extra kick. Finally, cocoa powder is dusted on top to give the dessert its instantly recognizable look.
第二部分首先来看动词 soak， 意思是浸、泡，也可以是渗透的意思。例如 Alma soaked the dishes in the sink before she washed them. Alma 在洗碗前先把盘子泡在水槽里。或者 Once she got home, Tony soaked in a tub and listened to some classical music. Tony 一到家就进浴缸里泡澡，并听起了古典音乐。接下来是单字 liquor， 它是名词，表示酒或是烈酒。例如 The candies had liquor inside them, so the mother wouldn't allow her children to try them. 这种糖含有酒精，所以那名妈妈不让孩子尝试。或是 Terry prefers drinking beer because he doesn't like the taste of liquor. Terry 比较喜欢喝啤酒，因为他不喜欢烈酒的味道。再来介绍形容词 recognizable， 指的是可以认出的或是可识别的。我们可以说 After his major weight loss, Joe was barely recognizable. Joe 大幅减重之后，让人几乎都认不出来了。或是说James's house is easily recognizable because it's taller than all of his neighbors' homes. James 的房子很容易辨认，因为它比其他所有邻居的房子都还要高。
Okay, it's time for us to discuss part 2 of our lesson for today. What is tiramisu? Well, it is a layered dessert, okay? If something's layered, well, it has layers, okay? That's some kind of substance or some kind of material that's thin, and you lay one down, one on top of the other, okay? So, of course, you have different layers in this dessert, and it probably requires some special way to prepare it. You prepare the different layers, and then you put them all together, and then you cut it or you cook it or do whatever with it. So it's a layered dessert. And of course, there are lots of different kinds of desserts in the world that are layered.
That's right. And tiramisu is actually a very complicated type of dessert to make, okay? It's typically made from sponge cake soaked in espresso and then topped with mascarpone cheese mixed with sugar and egg yolks. So there's a lot of things that go into making a tiramisu. So firstly is the sponge cake. You have to soak it in espresso. Now, what is espresso? It is a type of strong black coffee, and it is made by forcing steam through ground coffee beans. So this coffee that comes out of it is extra strong. And then you'll put the sponge cake and you'll soak it in espresso. So when you soak something, it is to make something very wet by putting it in a liquid. So in this case, we're putting the sponge cake inside of the espresso so the sponge cake can suck up all the espresso or soak up all the espresso.
Well, espresso, of course, is very thick Italian coffee. It's served in very small cups. You can get it at various coffee shops in Taiwan. And, of course, they soak the sponge cake in that espresso. The espresso is soaked up into the sponge cake. And then they put this mascarpone cheese on top of it. I did want to mention that this is a kind of cream cheese from Italy. And a lot of people will pronounce this as mascarpone because that would follow English pronunciation rules. O-N-E would leave the E at the end silent. But I believe in Italian, you should pronounce the E there. Mascarpone. Mascarpone cheese. And then you'll have that cheese mixed with sugar and egg yolks, which are the yellow parts of of different eggs. Okay, so you mix all those things together and you've got your tiramisu.
In some more grown-up recipes, a sweet liquor is also added to the cake for an extra kick. Okay, so in a more grown-up recipe, so if they're not eating this tiramisu, they can kind of add something else to it, which is a sweet liquor. What's a liquor? It is a strong type of alcohol that has been distilled or purified through a heating process. So there are different types of liquor like vodka or gin and things like that. And they will use a sweet liquor in this case and add it to the cake for an extra kick. Now, you already have espresso, so if you have liquor, it's really going to get quite energetic for somebody, so it's an extra kick. When you have an extra kick, it's like an extra flavor of something or an extra energy in it, because now you've got the liquor as well as the espresso. So this is a very grown-up tiramisu.
Yeah, it gives it an extra kick. You could say that it's spiked, I guess. I remember back in university, we used to have parties on my dorm floor, and they would serve fruit punch in a big glass bowl. But of course, you had to spike it. People would pour vodka in there or gin or whatever to give it some extra kick because, of course, we wanted to have a good time and have some liquor in our fruit punch. So again, this is kind of a grown-up recipe, a recipe for older people who would like to have a little bit of alcohol in their tiramisu. And finally, cocoa powder is dusted on top to give the dessert its instantly recognizable look. So this is cocoa powder, chocolate powder, you could say. And it's lightly sprinkled on top. You just put a little bit on top, just like you put a little bit of cinnamon on top of your cappuccino. Here the cocoa powder is dusted on top of this cake to give it this recognizable look. You can't have tiramisu without that cocoa powder dusted on top.
Yes, and when you see it, you are able to recognize it right away. So it is this cocoa powder that identifies what a tiramisu is. Okay, that comes to the end of part 2. Let's listen to part 3.
The origins of this sweet treat are uncertain, but it's most widely believed to come from the city of Treviso in the north of Italy. Indeed, the name tiramisu is derived from a phrase in the Treviso dialect that roughly translates as pick-me-up. The name is a reference to the dessert's high coffee content, which gives those who eat it a burst of energy. A restaurant in the city called La Beccherie is often credited with having created the dish in the late 1960s, and it is their recipe that is recognized by the Italian Academy of Cuisine. Even now, visitors to Treviso can dine in La Beccherie and try their famous creation for themselves.
第三部分我们看到动词 derive， 它的意思是使起源于或是使来自于。例如 Many of the author's stories derive from popular folk tales. 该作者的许多故事都取材自普遍流传的民间传说。或者 Plastics are derived from natural materials, including fossil fuels, minerals, and plants. 塑胶来自于天然原料，包括化石燃料、矿物和植物。再来看到 dialect， 这个名词的意思是方言。我们可以说Peter speaks German, but he doesn't understand all of the dialects. Peter 会说德语，但他不懂所有的方言。又或者说 Non-native speakers of English can find some regional dialects difficult to understand. 英语非母语的人可能会发现一些在地方言难以理解。下一个来介绍 translate， 这个动词的意思是翻译，也可以是转变或是转化的意思。例如Oftentimes, humor doesn't translate well into other languages. 幽默常常无法妥善地翻译成另外一种语言。最后是片语 credit somebody 或是 something with 名词或是动词 ing， 它指的是将点点点归功于某人事物，或是认为点点点是某人事物的功劳。例如 Arthur was credited with his innovative agricultural skill. Arthur 因其创新的农业技术而备受赞誉。又或者说 Jimmy credited his uncle with helping him succeed in business. Jimmy 把他的事业成功归功于叔叔的帮忙。
Okay, so we've talked about what tiramisu is and how it's prepared, but you might be wondering, where the heck did it come from? Well, the origins of this sweet treat are uncertain. Nobody really knows where it came from. This is a sweet treat, which is a kind of dessert, something sweet that you eat, usually at the end of a meal. But it's most widely believed to come from the city of Treviso in the north of Italy. So most people think that's where it came from the city of Treviso, which is in the northern part of Italy.
Indeed, the name tiramisu is derived from a phrase in the Treviso dialect that roughly translates as pick-me-up, just like our title. So a dialect is basically a form of language that is spoken by a particular group of people from a specific region. So, for example, in Canton province, they speak Cantonese. And for all of us in Taiwan, we speak Mandarin, but some people also speak Taiwanese. That's a dialect too.
As is Hakka, and as you said, Cantonese. Those are all dialects of Chinese. And even in Japan, of course, you've got regional dialects. If you study Japanese and go to, say, Aomori in the north, you may not be able to understand what they're talking about because they speak a different dialect there. And the same is true in Italy. They speak Italian differently in different parts of the country. So they have a dialect in Treviso, and in that language, the term tiramisu translates as pick me up. As our title says, it just means something to give you a little bit more stimulation, a little bit more energy, like you drink some coffee for a pick-me-up in the morning.
So tiramisu is derived from the phrase in the Treviso dialect. So derive means to come from something. So in this case, we're just talking about the word tiramisu coming from this Treviso dialect, and we know that it translates as pick me up. So when you're translating something or when you want to translate something, it is to express words or text from one language to another. So in this case, we know that tiramisu actually means pick me up in the Treviso dialect.
Back to derive, I could say, for example, this medicine is derived from the hemp plant. In other words, this particular substance comes from another substance. It's derived from it. It comes from it. And of course, this term is derived from this dialect in Italy. And again, it translates to pick me up if we're talking about how to express it in English. Okay, the name is a reference to the dessert's high coffee content, which gives those who eat it a burst of energy. So again, it's made with espresso. And so a lot of people eat this cake to give them a little extra boost in their alertness. So they, of course, have some tiramisu to give them that little bit of kick from that espresso coffee. It gives them a burst of energy, a little bit of extra energy that comes rather quickly. That's what a burst of is, something that happens quickly. And a restaurant in the city called La Becquerie is often credited with having created the dish in the late 1960s. And it is their recipe that is recognized by the Italian Academy of Cuisine. So we've got a restaurant in a city in Italy called La Becquerie, and they credit this restaurant as having created the dish. So if you're credited with doing something, that means they recognize you as having done something or you're responsible for this thing. You could say that, well, I'm graduating from Harvard today, but I credit my success to my high school teacher who inspired me to seek education at a higher institute of learning.
So when people talk about the origin of tiramisu, people will say the restaurant La Becquerie is where this dish or this dessert was invented or created. And specifically, their recipe is the one that is recognized by the Italian Academy of Cuisine. So an academy is basically a place of study or training in a special field. So in this case, the Italian Academy of Cuisine, I would assume that it is a prestigious school where you learn how to cook Italian cuisine, and it is in their school they recognize the recipe for tiramisu from this restaurant, Le Beccherie. That is where they believe or they think that this would be the most authentic version of tiramisu.
So if they say that's where it came from, we better believe it. And even now, visitors to Treviso can dine in Le Beccherie and try their famous creation for themselves. So if you're traveling to Italy and you'd like to check out some tiramisu, well, head to this city. Head to Treviso and you can dine there and try this famous creation for yourself if you've never had it before, or if you've had it before in places away from Italy, well, you can go to this place and eat the real thing. Nothing will taste as good as that ever for the rest of your life. Okay, we're at the end of our lesson for today. It's time now to listen to our Chinese teacher.
各位同学大家好，我是 Hanny。 我们来看今天的文法重点。课文第3部分提到，提拉米苏这个名字源自于特雷维索方言中的一个用语，大致意为 pick me up， 让我振作。好，文中它用到单字 dialect， 它是指方言的意思。那我们来学习它的字首字根。先看到 dia 这个字首啊，它表示穿越、跨越。那它可以指说从这一端到那一端的两端之间，所以 dia 它有在点点点之间的意思。那它也可以指说涵盖从这一端到另一端的范围，所以 dia 它还带有那种完全彻底的语义。好，那我们看到在 dialect 这个字当中，它的字首 dia 表示跨越或是在点点点之间，那么字根 lect 它表示交谈。人们彼此之间可以互相交谈、互相沟通的语言，其实最早就是用当地的方言嘛。那用这个方式，也许可以联想到 dialect， 就是指方言。好，我们顺便补充几个有相同字首的单字。第一个补充的是 diagnosis， 那它的字首 dia 表示完全或是穿越，那么 gnosis 这部分这个字根呢，它表示知悉、知识。我们就可以试着联想，完全知道病情，那就表示诊断出病症咯。所以呢 diagnosis 就是表达诊断或是诊断结果。第二个补充的是 diabetes， 它的字首 dia 表示穿越，字根 betes 表示走，那合在一起 diabetes 字面意思是 pass through 的意思。其实在拉丁文和希腊文中的 diabetes 表示排尿过多，那这是糖尿病的症状之一。我们也许就可以用一直有尿液流过、通过 pass through， 用这样的方式去联想到 diabetes 它表示糖尿病。好，那第三个补充的是 diagonal， 它的字首 dia 表示穿越， gon 是表示角度，那么 al 是形容词字尾。同学们可以试着联想，对角线就像是从某个角度穿越到另一个角度。好，那么 diagonal 这个字当形容词的时候呢，是表达对角线的、斜纹的，它也可以当名词去指对角线或是斜线。好，那看到课文下一句，他提到说，这个名字是指该甜点的咖啡含量高，让吃的人感受到一股能量。文中是用到 those who eat it 来表达吃的人，也就是那些吃提拉米苏的人。那当我们用到 those who 加动词，是指凡是怎么样的人，那些怎么样的人。这个 those 指的就是 those people 那些人，然后后面紧接着这个 who 引导的关系子句来修饰先行词 those， 去表达出那些怎么样的人，或是凡是怎么样的人。那要特别注意，它后面这个关系子句里面的动词是要用复数型哦。像我们说 those who are allergic to seafood 就可以表达凡是对海鲜过敏的人， those who don't eat meat 不吃肉的人等等。好，那以上是今天重点整理，我们回顾今天的单字吧。
Pasta. Mother cooked some delicious pasta with a rich tomato sauce for dinner. Layer. The baker carefully layered ice cream between each level of the cake to create an amazing dessert. Soak. After exercising, Greg likes to soak in a warm bath to relax his muscles. Liquor. Stepping up to the bar, Myra ordered a glass of fine liquor. Derive. The English language is derived from Germanic languages and has also been influenced by Latin. Dialect. Miguel's grandparents spoke a dialect that was distinct from the standard language spoken in the region. Translate. If you can't read the menu at the French restaurant, I can translate for you. Reference. In her essay, Jody made detailed references to several studies to support her argument.
Well, everyone, today's article has come to an end, and I sure hope you enjoy reading along with us. I am Kiki.
I am Roger.
See you next time.